Great. Okay, we get kicked off. It's 4 o'clock. Welcome everybody to our second webinar from Dublin, Ireland. We're delighted you can join us today. I know we have a great span of geography, so you're all welcome. I'm Mary Cronin from Upthink Innovation Agency. My co-hosts, Ciara Slavin from Climate Matters and Joanna O'Rourke from Dublin City Council, Eastern Midland region. The purpose of our series is to create awareness and understanding of the circular economy. How incredibly relevant is this topic currently? Thank you for all your questions and comments from last week with some really great insights on the circular economy from CEO Peter Corcoran from Monaghan Mushrooms, Geraldine Brennan from Circulaire, and Patrick Barrett from DAFM. And last week we were competing with President Biden's inauguration, but not this week. So to recap, the circular economy takes into account not only the economic aspects of business models, but also the environmental and the social impacts, of which you'll hear each of our companies talk to and refer to today. Our three companies will talk about their journeys and share their insights, and will hopefully, and I'm sure they'll inspire you and help build knowledge links into how to unlock opportunities for you. But before we get kicked off, thanks to Dublin City Council, Eastern Midlands region for sponsoring this series. And before we start, hand you over to Joanne Rourke.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be here for the second in our Modus Pathways to the Circular Economy webinar series. If this is your first time joining us, you are so welcome. And we have a really interesting topic today, the bioeconomy. I'm very excited about this one. So on behalf of the Eastern Midlands Waste Regional Management Plan Office, such a long name, we are delighted to be sponsoring and funding and commissioning this series. We're also supported by the Economic Development Office of Dublin City Council, and my colleague on the Modus team, Michaela Ferrando, is here today, and myself and Michaela are going to be answering and passing your questions on to our speakers as best we can. So please give us loads and loads of work to do, because we want this to be very interactive. So if you have any questions on your mind, pop them into the Q&A and we will do our best to look after those for you. So for now, just sit back and enjoy this session, and I'm going to hand you back to Mary.
Thank you, Joanne. So today's focus is on food and food waste, anaerobic digestion, and developing regional hubs with three very interesting companies. Nutramara, Cliona Dowling will talk to us, Teresa from Green Generation, and Deirdre from the Dingle Hub. So today's focus is food waste, and developing regional hubs. And to get started, Cliona is the marketing manager from Nutramara, a marine and biorefinery specialist located in the southwest coast of Ireland. Very beautiful. Creating innovative marine-based formulations for the nutraceutical, functional food and beverages and cosmetics industries. Welcome, Cliona.
Hi, guys. I'm delighted to be here today. Thanks for that introduction, Mary. So I suppose just to tell you a little bit about what we do and how we got to where we are. We were founded in 2017, and if you could put up my first slide there, Sinead, if it's the next one there now. So yeah, I just wanted to give you an introduction into where this all starts, which is, to us, it's nature. So we work with seaweed, we extract ingredients from seaweed, and it was looking initially, I suppose, back in 1985, when there was a lot of unemployment in the southwest and the west coast of Ireland. Seaweed was a source of opportunity for the country. So it's largely untapped. I suppose there's been lots of agricultural businesses and lots of food as well, but the high value element of seaweed was largely untapped. So one of the founders who worked on that back in 1985 got together with a tech entrepreneur and a production specialist, and came together to start Nutramara, which was to look at extracting really high value ingredients from seaweed. And a part of that is to do that through a biorefinery process. And that means that we take in seaweed and we extract ingredients from it, but we do so with zero waste. And we use water to extract, and there's no high temperatures, no chemicals. So it's a very kind process. And that's part of the sustainability story that we have, is that the seaweed is hand harvested. We don't use any harsh chemicals, and it's zero waste. So as one of the parts of that is that we use water to process the seaweed, and that water then ends up in an agricultural business and is returned to the soil. So that's the real circular story. And then we have other solid side streams, which would have been previously described as waste, and we have diverted those away from that into value-added products as well. So the next element there I have is team. So we just have a really strong team, and that's something Ireland has. They have talent in this area. I think the bioeconomy and the circular economy are two areas that we have a real strength. And I think as education, there's a new course in the Munster Technological University now specifically around business and the bioeconomy. So the talent really is there now to pursue this type of business. And I have technology down there as well, because I think things are really, we're at a really timely position now to take advantage of this industry. So just the next slide there. So yeah, just to, I suppose the first thing that we did was extract fucoidan from seaweed, which is a very high value ingredient. And that was the main task initially, and to work out how to do that in a really sustainable way. So traditionally that would have been extracted using alcohol, high temperatures and that kind of thing. We do so with water, and it's all as natural as possible, ensuring optimum bioactivity in the final product. So what that then became is, as you'll see there, a list of other ingredients. So things that cannot be synthesized at all. These are natural ingredients that are all organically certified. We're also gold members of the Origin Green Sustainability Programme, which just solidifies, I suppose, the work that we're doing on that. So just the next slide there as well. So just to sum that up, I suppose, we harvest seaweed, or we have harvesters on the west coast of Ireland. We extract ingredients from the seaweed with zero waste. We have a team of scientists who validate those ingredients. And I suppose the next stage of that, I suppose, in relation to the business case, is that we have formulators on site as well. So we have our ingredients are then, we look at the market, we look at where the gaps are. A big push coming from the conscious consumers now, wanting products that are fully sustainable and have the story to back them up, as well as being efficacious. So we have that as well, and we brand. So we have a range of formulations for hair care, nutraceuticals, cosmeceuticals, functional foods and beverages, and so on. So just the last slide there. And then this, I suppose, I was asked around the challenges that we faced, and while we've overcome a lot of challenges, one of the ones there would be novel. So what we're doing is different, and while it's a challenge, it's something that's really interesting and a really exciting area to work in, because it being novel means that's exciting. People haven't done a lot of what we're doing before. So while it's a challenge, and we do have barriers to pass through, we're doing that, and it's a very exciting space to work in. From a knowledge transfer perspective, I would have had no knowledge of the bioeconomy or the circular economy back in 2014, and I entered the industry in 2015. Now it's what I live and breathe, but there is a gap between the knowledge around the bioeconomy and circular economy in the general public and what we're doing kind of on the coal face. In relation to facilities, we have access to a lot in Ireland. We do our best, but I suppose we would see that as a challenge. Certain equipments, technologies that those industries, and that goes along with the next point there, packaging. Those industries are coming into the circular economy and bioeconomy space as well, and developing things that we can implement and use. So that's coming along, but it's all part of what's happening in the industry at the moment. And just the final slide there. Yeah, that's just my contact details. And I suppose what I've done here is included some logos on the supports we've gotten. So working with various institutes of technology, UCC, UCD, and European funded projects, and Patrick Barrett as well in the Department of Ag. Huge supports out there. So I suppose that's some of the people that have gotten us to where we are at the moment. So that's it.
Thank you, Cleena, for taking us on that journey from the pioneers in 1985 where you are today. Could you share with our SMEs in the audience how you went about building and scaling your brand, given it was such a novel space?
Yeah, I suppose that would be where those supports that I just mentioned come in here. So the knowledge base that we have now, we're potentially very lucky in Kerry, but we have links to a really solid bioeconomy group in IT Tralee, and they're there to support us at every step. And that's coming up with ideas, looking at different ways of extraction. There's the scientific community in Ireland is absolutely fantastic. It's really, really good. So that's part of what gives Nutrimara the backing. It's the minds that have been working, some of them in this industry for 30 years, and we have that to support us. So that gives Nutrimara really powerful information and data that we can enter into the market with. And then in relation to our consumer brands, our story and then the scientific story combined give us something that a lot of brands don't have. So they're probably the main. It's probably the scientific backing that we have.
Okay, thank you. And I think we'll touch on that in other presentations today around collaboration and research. And if I can ask you one more, if we have enough time, where will Nutrimara be in 2030, given this next decade is seen as transformational for the circular economy?
Yeah, I suppose I'd see huge progress. We've already made so much in 4 years. I suppose being one of the leading marine biotechnology companies in the world, our brands having partnerships and joint ventures around the world. But I suppose a key thing in that is that we really do care about the environment that we're in here. The West Coast of Ireland supplies us with an absolutely phenomenal source of wonderful plant, and we intend on caring for that. And also from there to the harvesters, ensuring that they're supported, that, and it's employment. Even for myself, I'm in Kerry. I wouldn't rather be anywhere else in the world, even now. And I have a job here in Kerry, and I'm very happy with that. And I think that's something Nutrimara intends to do for many, many decades to come.
Fantastic. Thank you, Cleena. Next,
thank you,
Ciara. Yes.
Maybe, Ciara, just one more question for Cleena. It's really interesting. Cleena, it's coming from the Q&A, but could you say a bit more about the sustainability of harvesting seaweed? Is there a risk that too much seaweed could be harvested and perhaps threaten the species? What would your comment on that be?
There'd be 80 to 90,000 tons of seaweed that wash up on the Irish coast annually. So that was surveyed back in 1985, and that is has been surveyed since then. So that's the figure that's there. It's hand harvested, where 15 centimeters of the stipe is left behind. And there's also scientific data to say that encourages growth. But aside from that, I suppose, without depending on that, because you're still harvesting a natural resource, we also have cultivation labs where we grow seaweed. So they would create seed and put it on long lines that are grown in the ocean. So we have, I suppose, that's kind of covered in that plan that we have around cultivating seaweed as well.
Great, super. Thank you, Cleena. Okay, Ciara.
Thanks, Mary. Next up, we have Teresa Patton. Teresa is the program manager with Green Generation. I had the pleasure of visiting her facility in Kildare just last year. So delighted to welcome Teresa and take us on the journey that Green Generation has been on.
Great stuff. Thank you, Ciara. Last year, as in last month, we're already in the new year, which is unbelievable. Good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to start off by saying thank you to Ciara and Mary for inviting us on this journey for the Pathways to the Circular Economy series. I work for a company called Green Generation. We're based in a small rural village called Nerney in County Kildare. And for those of you who don't know where that is, we're on the east coast of Ireland, 40, maybe 45 minutes drive from the greater Dublin region. Sinead, can I have a next slide, please? So to give you an idea of what we do, Green Generation, like most Irish companies, has grown fairly organically over the last 10 or so years. We started off Billy Costello there, our director, is a pig farmer. He'd be fairly well known as a pig farmer in Ireland and the UK. And so what came out of the need to process slurry on the farm came up with an opportunity to turn that slurry into energy through our own anaerobic digestion. So that's how Green Generation was born. And since then, the business model has adjusted, and now we process both agri and food waste to produce renewable energy. And the company has grown through innovation and sustainability. And we were recently awarded the innovative deployment of renewable energy at the recent SEAI Awards, which sort of solidifies what we're doing and sort of proves that we're doing a good job and really closing that circular economy loop. Next slide, please, Sinead. So my role within Green Generation, much like Glenn has mentioned there, is the transfer of knowledge from what Green Generation, I've been with the company since last summer, so what Green Generation have been doing for the last while, and just bringing that to a wider audience and breaking it down for people to understand. So I come from an incredibly non-agri background, so my entire world opened up to food waste to energy last year while I was finishing an MBA thesis on innovative ways to deal with food waste. My background is in corporate food and beverage, and I had first-hand experience with how much food waste there is out there, and I wanted sort of to go some way to finding a way to solve the problem. Green Generation, of course, started out with agri waste. We've now expanded into taking all of Tesco Ireland's food waste across the country, and we're turning that into renewable energy. And we also work with the likes of Domino's and Birdseye as our key partners. Our second activity then, you can see on the right hand side, is mixed waste plastics to high value products. So what started off with Tesco in taking in their food waste, we were able to adjust what we were doing to process their food waste and their food waste plastic. So our latest venture now is meeting the plastics problem head on by turning these plastics, mostly from food waste plastics, into other high value products. Again, sort of trying to close that loop in the circular economy. Next slide, please. So for those of you in the know, you have my apologies, but this is sort of my bread and butter. So it's to explain anaerobic digestion to people who don't know anything about it, which was me last summer. The process itself is it's a microbial breakdown of organisms in the absence of oxygen. So that's the anaerobic part. And what this does is it produces biogas, which we then upgrade to biomethane, which is also called renewable gas. So while it is a very scientific and technical process, we do try to break it down with all the puns intended, so that everyone we know can deal with the information. Two things then come from the AD process. Biogas we've talked about a lot already, and then the other product is digestate, which is used locally as a high quality eco fertilizer. Now, if I can bring your attention to the right hand side of the screen, we've got the food waste hierarchy. And while I think we can all agree that food waste is a bad thing, and we really need to go to great lengths to curb it, at the minute it seems like too big a problem for any one organization or any one actor to prevent, whether that's at the food loss side of the chain at source or the food waste sign here with us the consumers. So after the prevention, then feeding people really is the next step down. So we work closely with Food Cloud, who are a social enterprise in Ireland, to make this happen. So Food Cloud, we don't make it happen. Food Cloud work with Tesco and many other big retailers to make sure that any food that may not be allowed on the shelves of Tesco can go out to those in need through Food Cloud's charity network. We work closely with Food Cloud in that any food that can't be given for human consumption, we take off their hands, we collect it from them at their plant, and then it is diverted to animal feed. So layer by layer, we're going down the food waste hierarchy. So we're Green Generation are pulling out the food waste at a higher value than just disposing of it or compost. So we've got animal feed and anaerobic digestion in there. And then just to give an idea of the size of the opportunity that exists, that while food waste is bad, only 7% of anaerobic digestion plants around Europe are using food waste as a feedstock. So there's plenty of work there that we can do. Next slide, please. So this is us, a bird's eye view of our plant down in Nerney. If you want to go to item number 1, the black truck coming in there is, if he takes a slight left, he's going to go onto a weighbridge. So data is in everything we do. All of the food waste gets measured at site and at source. So it comes in here, it gets weighed at number 1, is brought around then to number 2, where if it's in packaging, it gets sorted on a picking line, and if not, it goes straight into the digesters. Then at number 3, the 2 towers there are the anaerobic digesters. So that's where the food goes into, and over a sort of a 30 to 60 day process gets turned into biogas, which is stored at the dome at number 4. After that, then the biogas, this is where we close the circle in our view. The biogas gets upgraded then to biomethane or renewable gas, and is transported by truck to Cush in County Kildare, which is about 8 kilometres away. And next slide, please, Sinead. So yeah, this is where we see the real opportunity coming in. So Cush is Ireland's first dedicated renewable gas entry point, which came on board last year in May 2020. Huge investment in something like this, but we are delighted to be able to say that we are practicing circularity here in Circulytics, in that we can, the amount of food waste that we get, we can give back the same amount in gas. So you're really getting a like for like in that way. So the Causeway project was co-funded by the EU, us, and our friends at Gas Networks Ireland, and there's plenty of literature out there that tells us that we have the potential, and Gas Networks Ireland released an EU report last year that said that Ireland had the highest per capita potential for renewable gas in Europe. So the opportunity is there. We just have to go out of our way to realise it and really make it happen. Next slide, please. So in the pipeline for us in the coming year, we've almost proved the hypothesis that the Tesco template can work. So we're going to build on that. The other thing we're going to be concentrating on is our innovation in terms of plastics. We work with a company, an innovative Irish company based in Galway called Paltech, and we have developed a versatile system that can process all types of polymers, so that's your hard and your soft plastics, and we want to make those into high value products. So on the right hand side there, you can see motorway bollards, which traditionally would be made with concrete, which is heavily CO2 intensive. And so we're working on making many of those. The other one then is telegraph poles. So these would be historically been treated in creosote, which is soon to be banned across Europe. So we see lots of potential in those as well. And then the last little image there is of cladding that we made that Tesco have taken off our hands and they've put back in their stores. So they've made lots of little pop-up recycling centres in their stores with the cladding that we've sent back to them. Next slide, please. So that's pretty much it from me. We're very excited about the future and what the circular economy has in store for us. We work with a broad range of partners in the food industry, whether it's a tech company or a large grocery store. We're looking to engage with anyone who has a food waste problem. And following on from that, if you want to get in touch, all of our details are on there. We'd love, when restrictions allow, we'd love to invite lots of people down to Nerney to show them what we really do, because it's much easier to understand it when you see it. And that's it from me. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Teresa, for taking us on that journey. Looking at it from the SMEs who are plentiful today in the audience, I'm just looking at the numbers here. What are the opportunities for them to get involved and understand more about food waste as a resource? I sense we will stop calling it waste quite soon, given that it has a revenue attached to it, really. Absolutely. So yeah, what could you say to them and around those opportunities?
I suppose just really rethinking food waste. It is a resource, and we can be doing better things with it. So I think we need to stop ignoring food waste as well. It's not just a business problem, it's a domestic problem. We waste 1 million tonnes of food waste in Ireland alone every year, which is huge. So, and like an example of that is that my neighbour, we've just moved from Dublin, but my neighbour down in Dublin 8 didn't get a brown bin ever. They've never had a brown bin, and they've never been allowed that sort of opportunity. So if you're a small business owner or you work in food and you're worried about your food waste problem, really investigate it, because until we start scratching the top of the circle, until we start getting stuck in, pretty much, we're never going to know how much is there and what we can do with it. But there are, I suppose what we're saying is, there are processes that can improve. Yes, it's waste, but it can be all raw material and we can turn it into something else.
Thank you. If we have time for one more, Mary? Yes.
For sure.
What would you see restricting, expanding this trees of this type operation, be it at your current site or elsewhere?
I think in the investment involved is heavy. You know, this has been huge investment from Green Generation's point of view, and there's not a lot of supports there, I suppose. We shouldn't be afraid as a country to start building many more anaerobic digestion plants that feed back into the grid, because like Gas Networks Ireland have said, we have the highest potential to make renewable gas, but GNI also see 20% of our gas in the grid coming from renewable sources before 2030. So all of the opportunities are there. I think we just need to grasp them, and I think possibly from a government and a policy point of view, we need to put the bioeconomy or bioenergy up there with hydro, solar, wind, the whole lot, because without all of them, I don't think we're going to make any of these targets realistically. So a little bit more support and a little bit more awareness, but webinars like this, bringing people in who don't know about it, is brilliant. So we're having the right conversations.
Okay, that's great, and you'll be glad to know there's a number of investors tuned in as well. So
fabulous.
So Ciara,
Mary, anything coming in there on the
yes, so
Q&A?
we have a few questions, so maybe a few minutes. So Teresa, we might just take a few questions then. There's some great questions here. So one of them, what happens to the food waste once the energy has been extracted? Is the digestate sold as a fertilizer?
I actually don't know the full answer to that question. I've spoken to farmers who've come to site, and I've seen them taking the digestate out in slurry tanks, but it's used on local farms. I'll need to speak to the management of the plant on whether that's sold back out. I don't think it is, but don't pin me to a wall there.
That's okay. So we can take that offline anyway with James, who's asked that question. Yeah. What about issues with odors? And if so, how are the odors controlled?
I've been on site regularly enough, and in terms of odors, it's no worse, and it is much better actually than when I walked. I've recently moved to Dingle, so it's much better than the odors that I smell walking down the road here in Dingle. So anyone who's used to living next to a farm or is anyway sort of agri focused, the odors aren't terrible. It was much less than I thought when I first went to site, so that's a really good thing.
Okay, and maybe finally, just before we kick in with our next speaker, we've had conversations, and you talk about food waste, and it's no longer waste. Really we have to think about it as a biomass and a feedstock. But collectively, one of the reasons why we are running this series of webinars is so that people can see there's opportunities there from a waste aspect, but also that policies coming down the road, some may need to be changed to facilitate some new circular business models. So just from a policy aspect, because I know we have a number of people from government here as well, from a policy aspect, what would you like to see happen that would make it easier from a how-to and SME aspect to move forward?
I suppose more awareness about it. We're very good at talking about hydro and solar and wind, but if we can start having the conversations about the bioeconomy, then that will be the first step. I was on a webinar this morning where Ireland were repeatedly called the laggards of the EU when it comes to the bioeconomy, because you just have to look at the numbers of AD plants we have in Ireland to the ones that we have in mainland Europe. Like Germany is at capacity at the minute, so we need to we really need to take it from our European neighbours that this is the way forward. And because the problem or the opportunity on one side is so large, and we know that we've got something that we can make something from it on the other side, then I think it's a bit of a waste actually of our natural resources.
Yeah, for sure. Anaerobic digestion in Germany certainly has paved the way. Okay, then thank you, Teresa. That was really interesting. Ciara, back to you for our next presenter.
Thank you, Mary. I'd like to now invite Deirdre, who's a fellow engineer and STEM enthusiast. Deirdre is representing the Dingle Creativity and Innovation Hub, where she is a business development executive. And Deirdre's going to, take us through how creatively Dingle have put together a hub bringing lots and lots of different aspects of society and the economy together. So over to you, Deirdre.
Many thanks, Ciara, and thank you all for the invitation to speak today. I'm going to focus on how the transition to low carbon society, the work that is underway on the Dingle Peninsula, which is a popular tourist destination in the southwest of Ireland. Interestingly, it has a resident population of 12,000, but it sees visitors in excess of 1 million annually, which makes it quite attractive for certain types of pilots, and we'll learn more about that as I go through. So if we could go to the next slide, thanks very much, Sinead. A good starting point is to have a quick overview of the timeline. The Dingle Hub was launched in April 2017, and one of its strategies from the outset was to initiate projects to explore the challenges and opportunities of transitioning to a low carbon society. This slide gives a good indication of the many different initiatives underway, but I'll just focus on some key ones relevant to today, and you'll find detail on all of these on the Dingle Peninsula 2030 website. So that's a website that describes an initiative that was launched officially this time last year. We had quite a number of people in a room in February last year to launch it, something that's a distant memory now. But it's the result of 4 partners, the Dingle Hub, the Marine and Renewable Energy Institute, ESB Networks, and our local development agency, NEWKD, working collaboratively together and with the local community for the past 2 years to enable the broader societal changes required for sustainable transition. We'll take a deeper look further on in slides at how engaging with our local farming community to identify challenges has led to collaborative projects to explore, first of all, the feasibility of anaerobic digestion for the peninsula, and many thanks to Teresa for doing the hard work of explaining what it is for me, but also at the same time piloting the use of sensor technology to support optimum grassland management in a bid to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And one key project that I want to draw attention to here is the Community Energy Mentor Training course delivered in late 2019, early 2020. Through the support of Kerry Education and Training Board and SEAI, we equipped 11 members of the community with knowledge relating to domestic energy efficiency, renewable energy options, and the potential for community-owned energy projects. And this group is now exploring the potential to pilot new energy service platforms with 2 startup companies. So they are an informed and knowledgeable group who can see the benefit of these platforms to enable community-owned energy and retrofits at scale. And they will provide valuable insights to these new startup companies in the development stage of their products. So the next slide, please, Sinead. So the Dingle Hub's vision is to build a creative, livable, sustainable community fostering a vibrant and diverse ecosystem of stakeholders to facilitate the creation and maintenance of well-paid year-round jobs on the Dingle Peninsula. And the work we do aligns with the Sustainable Development Goals with the important objective of finding ways to achieve meaningful local impact for those. So unlocking economic activities or opportunities through the transition to a low carbon society is a logical strategy to deliver on this vision. And we're learning that the 2 objectives fit very well together and ultimately lend depth to each other. I suppose it's our view that there's an opportunity for rural community innovation hubs to be real catalysts for change when both objectives are combined and of course backed up with support and resources too. Next slide. Our target outcomes reflect the expansive scope of the hub mission and its activities. we're working to deliver vibrant, strongly networked, transition engaged communities, while at the same time achieving a local employment impact of greater than 200 new jobs, which is very significant in an area of our size, but also now with the emerging opportunities from COVID, over 200 new connected home working incomes sustained here on the peninsula, which will have a major social and economic impact. Next slide, please. So how are we doing it, and what has been our game plan to date? Recognising, I suppose, the opportunities that connectivity would bring, the first platform was to provide shared workspace with fast, reliable broadband. Even knowing that I have reliable connectivity available for an event such as today, I think it's a key enabler to ensure the future viability of working from the regions. In a pre-COVID world, we realised that this on its own would not be sufficient to bring about the diverse employment that was needed. So we set about developing relationships and building collaborations in the areas of sustainability, digital transformation, creative industries, and now we're adding a fourth pillar, which is community engaged planning. And what this has led to is that we are becoming a living lab, a place where we've built the ecosystem to enable test and trial projects, and a place where innovation can flourish. We're already seeing the establishment of new companies as a direct impact of aggregated base demand from the various projects underway. And as these companies emerge, we leverage entrepreneurial and scaling services. You might give another click there, Sinead. Thanks. So from the relevant agencies, and also by providing pathways into networks such as the thriving Founders Circle driven by the RDI Hub in Killorglin. And I've already mentioned that these companies are benefiting from access to knowledgeable, engaged groups to pilot their early stage platforms. Of course, now we see a massive acceleration as well in the growth of home working and learning, and the opportunities that will bring with it for the future of rural communities. We're a local chapter of the Grow Remote organisation, and we leverage their wealth of resources to support companies to embed successful remote working policies into their business from the outset, because I believe this will be key for any business into the future. We can already see as well that community groups here are benefiting from a new pool of volunteers, people who have now moved here and invested in building community and are bringing new skills, expertise and connections. And I suppose the time is now to harness that, and we see that rural community innovation hubs have a key role to play in all of this. We focus on knowledge dissemination to and learning from other hubs through participation in events like this, and also through participation in a variety of national hub networks. Next slide. And a major aspect of dissemination of project learnings has been through a series of learning briefs underway with our applied research partner, MARI, and all of the learning briefs are available on the Dingle Peninsula 2030 website. Having recently been accepted as a member to the EU network of living labs as well, we'll now begin to share and learn through this platform as well. And we were also recently cited as a case study for sustainability on the UN Regional Information Centre for Western Europe website. So next slide. So in practice, work under each pillar is all about building living networks. It's really about lots of cups of tea, a multitude of WhatsApp groups, community workshops and events, vision building sessions and stakeholder meetings. Under all of our 4 pillars, we build these networks locally, regionally, nationally, and now internationally. And examples include several energy groups, local energy groups, and many collaborative partners with the different organisations and agencies you see here. Some of the logos are here, but there are many others linked to various other projects. So from our energy master plan, we know that almost half of our greenhouse gas emissions on the peninsula relate to agriculture and half to energy use. And this directed us very quickly towards the development of projects in these areas. And the ESB Networks Dingle project was one of the first of many energy related test and trial initiatives listed here. But recognising the vital role that agriculture plays in the economy of the peninsula and the importance of tackling related emissions, we engaged at an early stage with our local farming community, starting with discussions for the potential for anaerobic digestion to address the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, while at the same time providing a new stable revenue stream for farms. And we began working with Gas Networks Ireland to explore the feasibility of this, and launched a study in May 2019 funded by Gas Networks Ireland and Údarás na Gaeltachta through the EU LECO project. From that study, we know that we need to look at the potential for local markets for biofuel, and perhaps the option to provide fueling stations for biogas buses, trucks and tractors in use on the peninsula, because of course we are 75 kilometres from the nearest grid injection point here, which poses serious questions, and we have to come up with innovative solutions to make it viable here. Next slide, please. So grass is also needed as a feedstock for the digester, and it's critical to ensure that its production is not encouraged in an unsustainable manner for these purposes. So in exploring the potential for sensor technology to support carbon cost and labour efficiencies on 6 farms through our Farm Ambassador pilot project with Tagus Kerry Agribusiness and technology provider Netfasa, we realised that we can optimise grassland management techniques and ultimately scientifically prove sustainable production. So we're going to participate as a sustainable innovation pilot on the EU Plutus project, and that will enable us to roll out the sensor technology to 30 farms on the peninsula. And we'll leverage expertise and best practice from 33 consortium partners on that project to help increase profitability on farms, as well as identifying new income streams from higher value products. And the project will encourage new collaborations right across the value chain, with a view to unlocking new innovations and ensuing enterprise. So next slide, please. So this is some of the work in our community engaged planning. We've ran a series of community workshops in all 8 electoral districts in socioeconomic planning, and also identify the key challenges in each area. We've also run some work in online Reimagine workshops to see what can the future look like here on the peninsula. And this is a way forward, I do believe, for hubs to facilitate this happening in local communities for the future. I'll take the next slide. And so where is it all leading and what's possible? What do we see? We see the potential for multiple community-owned energy projects supporting employment and generating revenue streams. We see the potential for many new enterprises in all different sectors. And we see cross-sectoral transition engaged community-authored plans right across the peninsula. We see energy reductions and greenhouse gas reductions as per our energy master plan. And the role of the rural community and innovation hub in all of this will be to continue to build and strengthen the networks to enable the community working groups to leverage those regional and national and international networks to unlock the mechanisms to resource and fund projects, and to leverage relevant agencies and services and networks to scale the emerging businesses that will come from that. Many thanks.
Thank you, Deirdre. It's really insightful, the volume of communication and collaboration and workshops, and like you say, cups of tea that are all needed to advance this forward. Something that COVID has taught us is maybe around our supply chains and how vulnerable they can be. And it's brought to the surface the local versus global. So given your kind of both local, working with local companies, but also network with global participants, where do you see the growth benefits for SMEs in the regional areas?
Yeah, and I suppose the question is, when you position yourself somewhere, first of all, you're going to position yourself within an ecosystem that's relevant to your business. And I think Cleana referred to it earlier, how important it is to work with what's in her area. So in a regional setting, I think the scale is of huge benefit to SMEs. I can see it here myself. I can see the access that the new companies have to explore their technologies and their platforms. They've built relationships with the local community through various projects. There's a trust there, and it goes two ways. Then they will get real honest feedback, because when you're adding value to products, what is value value except what the customer is willing to pay. And I know we can do market research and we can do it at grand scale in large numbers, but how much can you really trust what's coming in off a social media poll or something? There's nothing that will replace having that strong relationship with your customers. And I really do believe when you're embedded in a local ecosystem, you will get that type of information. But I do firmly believe that that companies must embed remote working policies from the outset and establish them and get them working within the culture of the company. Because when you work from a remote region like this, you may build a small team around you, but you're going to need access to wider talent pools, and you're going to have the infrastructure in place to do that. But there's no need to reinvent the wheel. Regional hubs are plugged into networks that can support companies to do that now, but it is certainly the way of the future.
Thank you. If we have time for another question, we have quite a lot of councils and government participants on the webinar today. And do you see a role for that existing infrastructure to plug into the type of network that you're within?
Yeah, I suppose what we've done, and it was touched on as well by Cliona, I think earlier, is a lot of what we're doing is novel. We've found that we can address a need and we can identify opportunities here, but a lot of that work is around that network building and collaboration. And we have found that the traditional funding model, say, for hubs revolves around, say, providing that business development and specific property style management. So a lot of the funding pots deal with that. And we don't find much support in the area of developing the resources to run the networks and to initiate the projects and do all that. And we do think there is a little bit of a rethink needed in that, because there is a lot of potential there to unlock. And we are working with many people in this area to try to define the right models moving forward.
Thank you. I'll pass you over to Mary now, who's been keeping an eye on. I'm seeing lots and lots of questions come through for all the speakers today. So do you want to kick that off, Mary?
Yes, for sure. I'll start off with you, and you can join in, Ciara. Maybe Deirdre, I'm just watching the questions come up here on my phone. Maybe just one or two. This whole piece is of real interest to us, and I know Patrick Barrett and DAFM talk a lot about this. The whole regional hubs and local versus global, especially now after COVID. And I guess one of the questions in around that's coming up here is, could you talk more about the role of digital transformation in the hub? And if people wanted to develop their own hub, how's that worked for you guys?
Digital transfer, I suppose we see digital transformation as taking a look at the technologies that are available to provide cost and labor saving efficiencies within businesses, so that businesses can move forward in a competitive manner, because if we aren't upskilling in that area, we will be left behind. So the role of the hubs then is to facilitate training in that, and looking around ourselves. The area that we have undertaken is in the area of agriculture. It makes sense for us to try and enable knowledge and learning and trialing of technologies for that space. But there are, of course, so many other spaces. One thing we did see with COVID was digital production. That area of digital content production has absolutely exploded, and the hub has been about making connections for people who have capabilities in this area and connecting them with those who need it. And we're seeing a whole new projects emerge out of it. But it is about people upskilling as they've gone. Back in March, it was all about facilitating webinars. You had people here who upskilled very, very quickly and learned to facilitate for people. But yeah, it's all about communicating in a digital manner now, and COVID has done a lot to move that on, I think, quite a bit. My own parents at home can now do Zoom calls, so it's done a lot. It's done a lot to accelerate that for us. But certainly hubs have a role to play to facilitate people who want to upskill to provide the facilities for training for people and the opportunities to get involved in projects that will inform them.
Great. Okay then, Deirdre, thank you. So we have a number of other questions coming in from our Q&A. Maybe we'll just take one. I see one from the Irish BioEnergy Association, Sean. It's a really interesting comment, actually. They're doing great work around lobbying. So saying thank you, Teresa, for your presentation. As we know, the fundamental issue with mobilisation of anaerobic digestion in Ireland is that the production costs of biogas are multiple of the price paid for gas on the gas grid. Until this gap is filled by some of the support, unfortunately, we won't for many parts of the economy, but it would be of benefit. So, Teresa, maybe could you just kick in and just on that question?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the support needed. We need to take all aspects of renewable energy on board, and in order to set up an ADU plant and a biogas facility, and then never mind that, bringing it down to an injection point, there's a huge amount of investment needed there from green generation. So what we need now to really close that loop is to make the gas more affordable to the regular Joe, because I think from the research that we have and the people that we've been talking to, I think a lot of people want to be more sustainable and they want to move forward in sort of making a brighter future, to get corny about it or to do the right thing. But I think there needs to be some sort of subsidy there so that the regular Joe, so like my parents across the way, can buy renewable gas instead of the natural gas that comes out of the grid, because it's the same gas at the end of the day, but the costs are so high in producing it that there needs to be some sort of a support there from government or policy changes or what have you.
So one of the other questions, thank you, Teresa, one of the other questions there, which was from Irene, just in around, do you engage with local county councils on the brown bin collections? I mean, it's a question you would. Do you want to just respond to that one?
Oh, sure. We have been engaging with local county council. So the trick with us is that we are not a waste management company. So we've been reaching out to other waste management companies to see if they want to partner with us, because on paper all of this makes sense, but the nuts and the bolts of it is, how do we get that local brown bin waste to our facility? Is it the council that's going to bring it there, or do we need to go and get it? So there's a few little bits and pieces there that we need to work out. But what is really exciting about this year is that we've sort of identified a few waste management companies that we want to work with, but also there's once you get that up and running, there's another little bit of unearthing the education around food waste. I know some people are really good at it and some people are really good at recycling, but for us, we must be aware that we live in a bit of a bubble when it comes to environmentalism. You know, we're very good at doing our recycling and our food waste here, but the regular Joe down the street might not be. So we need to take that into account, and we're sort of steadily building different technologies to be able to deal with certain levels of contamination, but we would like that contamination level to come right down before we can start taking in food waste from everywhere.
Yes, and it's that whole piece that's no longer waste, that it is a biomass or a feedstock. Yes. That's super. That's great, Teresa. Super. A question here for you, Cleona, from Sean. Have you byproducts suitable for the organic farming sector? Cleona, maybe you might just kick in with that one.
Yeah, so the water that's used in our process to extract our ingredients is diverted to a company called BioBio Limited in Galway. So they use that in their product development, and they make organic biostimulants and biocontrol and bioprotectant products. So it's diverted in that way into, and because of all of our ingredients are organic, that side stream is organic as well.
Okay. Super, Cleona, that's great. Okay, so we have a few others. Ciara, do you have one you want to kick in with?
There was another kind of technical one here for Cleona. Do you have any issues with the chlorides associated with seaweed when processing?
I wouldn't have an answer for that one now. That'd be more technical.
I was thinking it's a bit
so, but if there's questions like that, I can absolutely pass them on.
Sure, we have the contact details, so we'll provide that afterwards.
Great.
Great. So maybe back to you, Teresa. Just a question on how big is the challenge is contamination of the waste for you in, you probably have a whole technical piece around this.
It depends on where we're getting it from. So the likes of, if we take the Tesco run, not very much, because we separate the plastic, the plastic wrap from the food. But for the likes of, you know, one of the biggest sectors, like I've said, is the sort of corporate catering, hotels. There's an awful lot of food waste there, to not generated by the companies themselves, but by their customers. So it's something that we're looking into. It's something that we're trying to educate our customers around, bearing in mind that our customer is actually not the end customer. Our customer is the waste management company. So we're putting sort of training modules in place so that the staff at a hotel in Westport can do their best to not put anything else into the food waste bin than should be in there, you know. So it's a sort of it's a minefield when you get into it. Something like Tesco and the grocery sector is really easy for us because we can see it going in, and while it's labor intensive, the digesters are getting really high value products in, which means really high value products out. So there's a little bit of work to be done there, but look, I think the opportunities and the challenges and opportunities, sort of the opportunities much outweigh the challenges. So we're looking forward to that.
Yes, for sure. Thank you, Teresa. One more question then before we finish, and maybe we'll go to you, Deirdre. We did some research ourselves during the summer in around the whole social analysis around circular economy and sustainability. But there's a question coming up here. Could you please talk more about the role of, actually not digital, about sustainability, and how difficult is it to shift people's attitude with engagement towards sustainability and the circular economy? Maybe even on the word sustainability, what it means for people. Deirdre.
Sorry, I was just saying that is an excellent question, because what we found is that you don't really go out to engage people just on the one topic of sustainability. And of course, that word gets used and abused in so many different contexts as well. We found what we did, and again, working in a rural setting, there are a lot of advantages. We found that we engaged people on a variety of topics, and it may have been to do with encouraging employment, upskilling in the area of film, or it could have been around energy that we were engaging, but we would have encountered the same people, on a repeat basis. So you were getting deeper engagement. And as we have progressed over the 2 years, what we are finding is a lot more traction around, and then sustainability is embedded in all of the different initiatives. If we're looking at tourism here on the peninsula, we are now embedding a focus on sustainability within that tourism. So we're meeting people where they're at, which I think is very, very important in engagement. And it has to take a holistic approach. And that is why we're moving in the direction of that community authored planning. We will tackle the transport issues, but we will tackle them then while trying to provide sustainable solutions for the future. And I think that's the most important.
Great. And I suppose what will be on a lot of people's minds is, how do we all move to Dingle Peninsula? So that's great. So thank you very much. So we've had a lot of questions coming today. So we will send you out a copy of the webinar link and the slides with all of the details. Just to remind you that next week we will be covering on our third webinar, financing the transition, and we'll talk about what the options are, where the market is at around, and we have a lot of interest from investors, and what they're looking at is, what is the circular economy and what are the opportunities. We've included in our slides a useful resources link. If you have any questions, you can contact me directly, and we can certainly field them. So thank you very much. Great speakers today, some great content, and thank you, Lena, for some of those lovely comments coming in as well. Thank you, Cliona. Thank you, Teresa, and Deirdre, and thanks to Joanne and Michaela for all those questions, and Kira, and to Web Journey, Sinead, who's our digital marketers and technical background. And we look forward to seeing you next Wednesday at 4 p.m. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.